The Apache woman said, "I can heal your horse, but with one condition." The cowboy was frozen when the sun had not fully risen yet, but the ranch was already awake. A thin orange line sat on the edge of the horizon, touching the wide land where dust, grass, and silence lived together. The cowboy stood near the corral, his boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. He had lived this routine for years. Wake early, check the fences, feed the horses, listen to the land. It was a simple life, but it was the only one he knew, and he respected it deeply. Among all the horses on the ranch, there was one that mattered more to him than the rest. The horse was strong, calm, and loyal. It had carried him through storms, long cattle drives, and lonely nights when the world felt too large. The cowboy trusted that horse more than most people. He believed animals understood things humans often ignored. That morning something felt wrong before he even reached the stall. The horse did not lift its head when he approached. Its breathing was uneven, slow, and heavy. One leg was bent in an unnatural way, and its body trembled slightly. The cowboy's chest tightened. He moved closer, speaking softly, trying not to scare it. The horse tried to stand but failed, letting out a weak sound that cut deep into the quiet morning. The cowboy knelt beside it, running his hand along its neck. The skin was hot, too hot. His mind raced through everything he knew: injury, infection, poison plant. He did not know which was worse. What he did know was that this was not something that would fix itself. He called for help immediately. By late morning, a local veterinarian arrived. The vet examined the horse carefully, checking the leg, the eyes, the breathing. His face stayed serious the entire time. After a long pause, the vet stood up and removed his gloves. He spoke gently but honestly. The injury was severe. The infection had spread. Treatment might help, but there were no promises. Recovery, if it happened at all, would be slow and painful. The cowboy nodded, but his hands shook slightly. He agreed to try everything. Medicine was given. The horse was cleaned and wrapped. Neighbors stopped by, offering support, but their eyes said what their mouths would not. Many had seen this before. Horses did not always come back from this kind of damage. As the day passed, the horse grew weaker. That night, the cowboy stayed in the barn. He did not go home. He sat on a wooden crate beside the stall, listening to every breath the horse took. He remembered the first day he had ridden it, how calm it had been, how strong. He whispered promises into the quiet air, though he did not know if promises mattered anymore. By the second day, the medicine did not seem to help. The horse refused food. Its eyes were dull, distant. The cowboy felt helpless in a way he had never felt before. He was a man who fixed fences, solved problems, and survived hard seasons. But now, all he could do was wait. That afternoon, an older ranch hand stopped by. He watched silently for a while, then spoke carefully. He mentioned a woman, an Apache woman who lived not far from the edge of the land. Some people said she knew things about animals that others did not. Not magic, not stories. Knowledge passed down through generations. The cowboy listened but did not respond right away. He had heard things like this before. Rumors, talk. He believed in hard work and learned skill. Still, as the sun dipped lower and the horse struggled to breathe, desperation began to replace doubt. That night, he made a decision. Early the next morning, the cowboy drove out toward the edge of the land where paved roads turned into dirt paths. The air was cool and the sky was pale blue. He did not know exactly what he expected. He only knew that doing nothing was no longer an option. The woman lived in a small, simple home. No signs, no fences meant to impress, just quiet and space. She was outside when he arrived, working with herbs laid out carefully on a cloth. She looked up as he approached, her expression calm and unreadable. He explained everything slowly. About the horse, about the injury, about the vet. About how the horse was more than an animal to him. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she stood up and dusted her hands. She did not promise anything. She did not speak in big words. She simply said she would come and look. Back at the ranch, the barn felt heavy with worry. The Apache woman entered quietly. She did not rush. She did not touch the horse right away. She watched. She listened. She placed her hand near the horse's chest, feeling its breathing, its warmth, its fear. The cowboy stood nearby, unsure of where to look or what to say. After a long silence, she straightened and turned to him. Her voice was steady, not dramatic. She said she could help the horse. Not quickly, not easily, but there was a chance. Relief washed over him, but it did not last long. She continued speaking. She said there was a condition. One condition he had to agree to before she began. It was not about money. It was not about favors. It was something else entirely. The cowboy felt his body go still. The barn seemed too quiet. He waited for her to explain, his heart pounding as if the answer might change everything. She looked him directly in the eyes and told him to listen carefully. What she asked would not be simple. It would require patience, respect, change. Not just for the horse, but for how he lived on the land. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. Outside, the wind moved gently through the fields. Inside the barn, the horse shifted slightly, letting out a low breath. The cowboy realized in that moment that saving the horse might cost him more than he expected. And yet, he already knew the truth. If there was even a small chance, he would take it. The cowboy did not answer right away. He stood there in the barn, feeling the weight of the woman's words settle deep inside him. He had expected medicine, maybe herbs, maybe careful instructions. He had not expected a condition that sounded like it would reach far beyond the horse lying weak in the stall. The Apache woman did not rush him. She seemed to understand silence. She walked slowly around the stall, observing the ground, the light coming in through the wooden gaps, the way the horse's ears moved slightly at certain sounds. Finally, she spoke again, her voice calm and firm. She said the condition was simple to say, but hard to live. While she helped the horse heal, the cowboy had to change how he treated the land and everything on it. No harsh rushing, no careless riding, no ignoring small signs. He had to slow down, listen, and respect the balance around him. The horse would feel every choice he made. The cowboy felt his throat tighten. He had grown up believing hard work meant pushing forward no matter what. The idea that slowing down could matter felt strange. Still, he nodded. He told her he would do whatever it took. She looked at him closely, as if searching for truth in his face. After a moment, she nodded as well. She knelt beside the horse and began her work. She did not use many tools. She did not hurry. She gently cleaned the injured leg, using warm water mixed with crushed leaves. She spoke softly to the horse, not in commands, but in a low, steady voice meant to calm. The horse's breathing slowly eased just a little. The cowboy watched every movement. He noticed how careful she was, how she never forced the horse to move more than it could. When she finished, she stood and gave him clear instructions. Keep the horse quiet, fresh water, shade, no riding, no pressure, no anger. Before leaving, she turned back to him. She reminded him that her help depended on his actions. If he ignored the condition, she would stop coming. That night, the cowboy did not sleep much. He stayed close to the barn, listening. The horse still struggled, but something felt different. The fear in its eyes seemed less sharp. Just before dawn, the horse shifted and rested its head against the stall wall, breathing a little easier. The next day tested the cowboy's patience. Work on the ranch did not stop just because one horse was sick. Fences needed repair. Cattle needed checking. Normally, he would rush through everything. This time, he forced himself to slow down. He walked instead of riding when he could. He noticed how the ground felt under his boots. He noticed how birds scattered when he moved too fast. It felt uncomfortable, almost wrong. Neighbors came by again. Some asked why the Apache woman was involved. Some raised their eyebrows. The cowboy did not explain much. He simply said he was trying something different. Inside, doubt still whispered. What if this did nothing? What if he was wasting time? That afternoon, the woman returned. She checked the horse again, feeling the leg, watching the eyes. She said very little, but she nodded once. That small gesture meant more to him than long speeches. Over the next few days, the routine continued. She came. She worked quietly. She showed him how to notice signs he had always missed. The way the horse's ears pointed when it was uncomfortable. The way its breathing changed before pain showed itself. She explained that animals often spoke before humans learned to listen. The cowboy began to understand that the condition was not a rule. It was a lesson. Still, there were moments when frustration rose. One evening, a fence broke farther out and cattle began to wander. The cowboy felt the urge to rush, to ride hard and fast. He stopped himself, remembering her words. He handled the problem calmly, taking more time than usual. When he returned, the horse lifted its head on its own. It was a small movement, but it felt like a miracle. That night, the cowboy sat alone outside the barn. He thought about how much of his life had been about control. Control of animals, control of land, control of outcomes. Now, he was learning that control was not the same as care. The Apache woman arrived early the next morning. She smiled faintly when she saw the horse standing with support. She told him the healing had begun, but warned him not to believe the hardest part was over. Healing, she said, often revealed truths people tried to avoid. The cowboy felt a quiet fear at her words, but he did not pull back. As the sun rose higher, he realized something important. The condition had already started changing him, and he knew, deep down, that the price of ignoring it would be far greater than the effort of honoring it. The horse was still weak. The road ahead was still long. But for the first time since that terrible morning, hope felt real. The days that followed settled into a slow rhythm the cowboy had never known before. Each morning he rose before the sun, but instead of rushing, he paused. He stood outside the barn and listened. The land was never silent. There was always wind moving through grass, insects waking up, distant birds calling to one another. Before, he had moved past these sounds without noticing. Now he let them guide his pace. The horse was still weak, but it was changing. Its eyes were clearer. It drank water without being urged. Some mornings it shifted its weight and stood a little straighter. These small signs meant everything to the cowboy. He learned not to celebrate too early, but hope warmed him quietly, like a low fire that did not burn out. When the Apache woman arrived each day, she did not come like someone doing a job. She came like someone visiting a responsibility. Sometimes she spoke. Sometimes she did not. She showed him how to clean the injury carefully, how to feel heat with the back of his hand, how to know when to stop. She told him that too much help could be as harmful as none at all. One afternoon, as they stood beside the stall, she asked him why the horse mattered so much. The question surprised him. He had never thought about explaining it. After a long pause, he said the horse had been there when no one else was. Through long rides, bad weather, and hard seasons, it never quit on him. Saying it out loud made his chest tighten. She nodded and said animals remembered kindness, even when humans forgot they had given it. As the week passed, she began to teach him more, not only about the horse, but about noticing life around him. She pointed out how the grass near the water grew differently, how certain birds stayed close when the land felt safe, how rushing through work left marks that stayed longer than footprints. The cowboy listened. At first, it felt strange to accept guidance from someone who lived so differently from him, but he could not deny what he saw. The horse improved steadily. And something else changed too. The ranch itself felt calmer, less tense, as if it had been holding its breath and was finally allowed to breathe. One evening after the woman left, the cowboy tried something new. He sat in the dirt near the stall instead of on a chair. He stayed at the horse's eye level. He spoke quietly, not to command or encourage, but just to be there. The horse shifted closer, resting its head lightly near him. That simple trust brought tears he did not expect. There were still difficult moments. One night the horse struggled. Its breathing grew rough again and fear returned like a shadow. The cowboy felt panic rise fast. His hands shook as he remembered the past when action meant force. This time he stopped. He slowed his breathing first. He remembered what he had been taught. He stayed calm. Slowly the horse settled. When the woman arrived the next morning, she could see the signs. She said nothing about it at first. Later, as they walked a short distance away, she told him that fear traveled faster than pain. If he panicked, the horse would too. She said healing often depended on the calm of the one standing nearby. That lesson stayed with him. As days turned into weeks, neighbors noticed the change. The cowboy no longer rushed past them. He spoke less but listened more. Some joked about him becoming soft. Others stayed quiet, unsure what to make of it. He did not argue. He did not explain. He did not need to. One afternoon, the Apache woman arrived later than usual. The cowboy felt uneasy. When she finally came, she looked tired. She said the healing had reached an important point. The horse was ready to test its strength, but only carefully. She warned him not to push, not to rush the moment he had been waiting for. Together, they guided the horse a few steps outside the stall. The sun touched its coat gently. The horse stood, shaking slightly, but it did not fall. The cowboy held his breath. He wanted to cheer. He wanted to cry. He did neither. The woman watched closely, then placed her hand on the horse's neck. She said this was a turning point. Not the end, but proof that patience worked. She reminded him that healing did not mean returning to the old way. It meant moving forward differently. Later that evening, after she left, the cowboy walked the land slowly. He noticed things he had never valued before. The way shadows moved, the way the air cooled near water, the way animals watched him now, not as a threat but as part of the space. He realized something important. The condition had never been only about the horse. It had been about how he showed up in the world. The next morning, the horse stood on its own without support, just for a moment, but it was enough. When the Apache woman saw this, she allowed herself a small smile. She told him the body followed the spirit. When fear left, strength returned. Before leaving that day, she told him that the hardest lesson was still coming. Healing, she said, always asked for something in return. Not payment, responsibility. The cowboy watched her walk away, feeling both grateful and uneasy. He looked back at the horse, standing quietly in the sunlight. For the first time, he understood that saving a life changed the one who tried to save it. The change did not happen all at once. It arrived quietly, like a shift in the wind that only careful people noticed. The horse grew stronger each day. It walked farther. It stood longer. Its eyes were bright again and its breathing was steady. The cowboy felt relief, but it was mixed with a new feeling he did not know how to name. It felt like responsibility, heavier than before. The Apache woman still came, though not every day now. When she did, she watched more than she touched. She said less, but her words carried more weight. One afternoon, as they stood watching the horse move slowly in the open space, she spoke in a tone that told him this moment mattered. She said the horse was healing well, but healing always created a debt. Not a debt that could be paid with money or thanks. A debt that came from being given a second chance. She reminded him of the condition he had agreed to in the beginning. It was not finished yet. The cowboy felt his stomach tighten. He had known this moment would come. He just had not known how. She explained that soon there would be a meeting. Ranch owners, local officials, and community members would gather to talk about land use near the edge of the territory. The discussion would affect access to water and grazing areas used by her people for generations. Decisions would be made quickly without their voices truly being heard. She looked at him and said nothing more. The meaning was clear. That night the cowboy could not rest. He sat outside, staring at the stars. He had always avoided meetings like that. He was a working man, not someone who spoke in front of others. He knew the power structure well enough to understand what standing up could cost him. Work could be lost. Trust could be broken. Silence had always felt safer, but now silence felt heavy. The next morning he went through his routine slowly. He checked the horse, cleaned the stall, walked the fence line. Everything felt familiar, yet different. The land no longer felt like something he owned or controlled. It felt like something he was part of. That change made the choice in front of him impossible to ignore. Word of the meeting spread quickly. Some ranchers spoke with confidence, already certain of the outcome. Others did not care, believing it would not affect them. When the cowboy mentioned he planned to attend, a few looked surprised. One laughed, thinking it was a joke. He did not laugh with them. On the day of the meeting, he dressed simply. Clean shirt, worn boots, no effort to impress. He arrived early and sat near the back. The room filled slowly. Voices grew louder, papers shuffled. The air felt tense. When the discussion began, it moved fast. Plans were spoken as if they were already decided. When someone from the Apache community tried to speak, they were interrupted politely, then ignored. The cowboy felt his chest tighten. He thought of the horse struggling to stand, of the patience it had taken to heal. He thought of the condition. When the moment came, he stood up. At first, no one noticed. Then the room grew quiet. All eyes turned toward him. He felt fear rush through his body, sharp and fast. His voice shook at the start, but he did not stop. He spoke about the land, about how it remembered every action taken on it, about how rushing decisions caused damage that lasted longer than expected. He did not speak for the Apache woman directly. He spoke about fairness, about listening, about responsibility. He said that ignoring voices did not make problems disappear. It only delayed them. Some faces hardened. Others looked away. A few listened. When he finished, the room was silent again. The meeting continued, but something had changed. Questions were asked that had not been planned. Time was taken that had not been expected. No final decision was made that day. The cowboy left the room exhausted. Outside, the Apache woman waited. She did not smile. She did not thank him. She simply nodded once. That nod meant more than words. Back at the ranch, life continued. Some people treated him differently. A few avoided him. One employer spoke to him privately, warning him to stay quiet in the future. The cowboy listened without arguing. He knew the cost now. The horse, however, continued to improve. Each morning it walked with more strength. Each evening it rested calmly. Watching it reminded him why he had spoken up. Healing was not only about saving something you loved. It was about protecting what allowed that love to exist. One afternoon, the Apache woman came for what felt like the final time. She watched the horse move freely, then turned to him. She said he had honored the condition. Not perfectly, but honestly. She told him that was enough. Before leaving, she said something he would never forget. She said that courage was not loud. It did not need approval. It only needed truth. As she walked away, the cowboy felt a quiet sense of peace. He did not know what the future held. Work might change. Relationships might shift. But he knew he had chosen the harder path for the right reason. The land was still there. The horse was still alive. And he was no longer the same man who had once believed healing came without responsibility. The weeks that followed felt calmer, but deeper. The kind of calm that comes after something important has already changed. The horse was no longer confined to the stall. It walked freely now, slow but steady, its strength returning in a natural way. The cowboy watched it every morning, not with fear anymore, but with respect. He did not rush it. He did not test it. He trusted the process, just as he had learned to trust the land. People around the ranch noticed the difference in the horse first. They said it looked younger, more aware. Some said they had never seen a recovery like it. The cowboy listened but did not boast. He knew the healing had not come from effort alone. It had come from patience, from listening, from learning when not to act. The Apache woman did not return again after that last visit. There was no goodbye, no promise to stay in touch. At first, the cowboy wondered if that meant something was unfinished. Over time, he understood. Some people entered your life to teach you how to stand on your own. When the lesson was complete, they left quietly. The meeting about the land did not end that day, but it changed direction. More discussions followed, slower ones. Voices that had been ignored were now included, not because it was easy, but because silence had been broken. The cowboy was not at the center of it all, but his words had opened a door. Others stepped through after him. There were consequences. Some work offers stopped coming. Some people kept their distance. The cowboy accepted that without bitterness. He had learned that doing the right thing did not always bring comfort. Sometimes it brought clarity instead. The horse became his quiet companion again. They did not ride long distances yet. They walked. They stood together at sunrise and sunset. The cowboy noticed how the horse responded to calm, to steady presence. He also noticed how he himself had changed. His temper was softer, his movements slower, his listening deeper. One evening, as the sky turned gold and the land cooled, the cowboy thought back to the day the horse had collapsed. He remembered the fear, the helplessness, the feeling of loss before anything had truly ended. He realized that the pain had opened a door he did not know existed. Healing the horse had healed something in him too. He no longer saw the land as something to push against. He saw it as something to walk with. He no longer measured strength by speed or force. He measured it by patience and care. These were lessons no one had taught him directly before. One day, a young ranch hand asked him about the horse, asked how it had recovered when everyone thought it wouldn't. The cowboy thought carefully before answering. He did not mention special methods or quick fixes. He said healing came when you stopped trying to control everything and started paying attention. The young man did not fully understand, but he listened. The seasons shifted. Grass grew taller. Winds changed direction. Life moved forward. The cowboy continued working, continued caring, continued standing quietly when it mattered. He did not seek praise. He did not seek recognition. He knew the truth of what had happened, and that was enough. Sometimes when he walked near the edge of the land, he thought of the Apache woman. He hoped she knew the condition had been honored not just once, but every day since. He hoped she knew the lesson had stayed. The horse walked beside him, strong now, steady and calm. Together they moved through the land, not as owner and animal, but as two lives that had learned what it meant to heal with respect. And in that quiet understanding, the cowboy found something he had never expected: peace.